Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. A light rain fell on the streets of Chicago, turning the sidewalks into shimmering mirrors under the streetlights. Hurried passers-by, umbrellas raised, made their way through the puddles. Among them, 38-year-old Marcus Reynolds walked with a calm but determined stride. His perfectly tailored charcoal suit was slightly damp from the raindrops, and his dark tie moved with each step. He was returning from a strategic meeting with investors for his company, a technology firm he had built from the ground up and which employed hundreds of people across the city. Marcus was a man of average height, but his presence commanded respect. His deep, watchful brown eyes scanned the street with calm vigilance. He was used to stares, judgments, and prejudices, but tonight, he hadn't expected it all to turn into a humiliating public experience. As he approached his car, a black police SUV with its sirens off suddenly stopped beside him. Two officers got out with calculated speed. Their looks were hard, their movements authoritative. "Sir, stop," shouted one of them, Agent Thompson, his voice as sharp as a cleaver. Marcus stopped immediately, raising his hands slightly, but his calmness betrayed neither fear nor aggression. "Excuse me, but, what's going on?" he asked, his voice firm but measured. "You are a suspect in an ongoing case." "Stay where you are," replied Agent Keller, approaching him in a cold and condescending tone. Before he could explain that he wasn't involved in anything, Thompson grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the patrol car. Passers-by stopped, some taking out their phones to film. A murmur rippled through the sidewalk, a mixture of confusion and indignation. Marcus felt the humiliation rising. He had been arrested without warning, without reason, simply because of the appearance of his skin. He was aware of the situation. In the eyes of these men, he was not a respected citizen, nor a recognized business leader, but just a body to be controlled. "You will regret this injustice," said Marcus, calmly, but with an intensity that made Keller hesitate for a few moments. Inside the vehicle, the officers exchanged quick but nervous glances. They did not yet know who they were facing: Marcus Reynolds, philanthropist, successful entrepreneur and respected figure in the city. The rain continued to fall, the city seemed to hold its breath, and Marcus, silently, prepared to turn the situation to his advantage. Tonight, what was supposed to be a simple drive home would become the beginning of a confrontation that would expose the injustice and reveal the true identity of the man the police thought they could humiliate with impunity. The rain hadn't stopped since Marcus had been arrested. The red and blue headlights of the patrol car reflected off the wet asphalt, creating an almost hypnotic effect, as if the city itself were witnessing the scene. Marcus sat in the back seat, his hands cuffed behind his back, his eyes calmly observing his assailants. "You're lucky we're in a good mood," Thompson said, looking at him with a sarcastic smile. "Luck?" repeated Marcus, his tone neutral but full of reproach. "I didn't do anything." "You can't just arrest someone." "Yes. We can." "And we did," retorted Keller, frowning. Passers-by filming the scene on their phones shouted and protested. Some called out to the officers. "Hey! Leave him alone. You have no reason to." "That's ridiculous," exclaimed a woman, phone in hand. Thompson glared at the witnesses. "Back up," he ordered, but his voice trembled slightly under the pressure of the stairs and cameras. Marcus, for his part, remained unperturbed. He knew that his dignity was his greatest weapon. His silence was not fear, but a way of showing that nothing in this humiliation could break him. "You'll regret what you're doing," he murmured, loud enough for the officers to hear. "Oh, shut up," growled Keller, annoyed by Marcus's calmness. As they approached the patrol car, Thompson glanced at Keller, a mixture of uncertainty and frustration in his eyes. Marcus, noticing this slight doubt, allowed himself a small inward smile. "Sir, I must remind you that you are handcuffed and that you must cooperate," said Keller, trying to regain control. Marcus looked up at the gray sky, letting out a slow, measured breath. He had experienced enough injustice to know that calm could disarm anger and stupidity. At that precise moment, Keller's phone vibrated. He reluctantly answered, listened for a few seconds, then paled slightly. Thompson, perplexed, looked at him. "What is it?" he asked. "Marcus Reynolds." "It's Marcus Reynolds," replied Keller, his voice low and hesitant. The two officers exchanged a silent glance. The man they believed to be just another suspect was in reality the man who owned and ran the company that employed several officers from that same police force, and that financed social projects throughout the city. Marcus, sitting in the vehicle, watched them struggle with their own consciences. Their arrogance had just crashed against reality. They were now faced with a dilemma that no force could resolve. They had publicly humiliated a man of immense influence and respect, and there was no going back. I, stammered Thompson, unable to find his words. "We'll sort this out," Keller murmured, but his voice betrayed his worry. Marcus gave an almost imperceptible smile. This unjust arrest had just turned into an opportunity, a chance to reveal the truth, to confront the injustice, and to turn the situation to his advantage. The patrol car arrived at the police station, the rain drumming on the roof like an anxious rhythm. Marcus was led into a small, dimly lit office, where Captain Richard Hayes, with his stern face and piercing gaze, waited. The walls were covered with honor rolls and certificates, reminders of the police force's history, but this formal decor did little to lessen the tension in the room. "So, it's you, Marcus Reynolds?" Hayes asked, his eyes never leaving Marcus, a mixture of disbelief and suppressed anger. "Yes, Captain," replied Marcus, in a calm but firm voice. "You were arrested?" Thompson stammered, unable to hide his embarrassment. "Without a valid reason," Marcus corrected calmly. Captain Hayes stood up abruptly and took a few steps, observing the agents with an icy stare. "Thompson, Keller, what's going on? You've arrested Marcus Reynolds, the CEO of Reynolds Technologies, a renowned philanthropist and one of the city's major contributors to youth programs?" We thought," stammered Keller, but he stopped, unable to finish his sentence. Marcus remained motionless, silent, letting the truth sink in. The silence in the room was almost deafening. The agents felt trapped, paralyzed by their own mistake. The arrogance and certainty with which they had arrested him had crumbled in seconds. "You realize," began Thompson, but Hayes interrupted him sharply. "You don't realize anything at all. You have publicly humiliated a respected, influential, and kind man. And all this, why? Because he is black." Marcus crossed his arms and spoke calmly, each word carefully weighed. "Captain, I don't demand revenge. I only demand recognition of this injustice. My rights have been violated, and I am here to ensure that it never happens again." Hayes stared at Marcus for a moment, then nodded solemnly. "You're right. This arrest should never have happened. Thompson, Keller, you will write a detailed report and apologize." The agents were now completely shaken. Their faces, red and wet with embarrassment, reflected the gravity of their mistake. Marcus, however, remained calm and dignified, demonstrating that true strength lies not in violence or fear, but in self-control and truth. "And you, Marcus," Hayes continued, "deserve a public apology for this humiliation. We will also review our procedures to ensure this never happens again." Marcus gave a slight but confident smile. It was no longer just a matter of personal justice, it was now an opportunity to transform an injustice into an example for the entire city. The sound of rain outside seemed to soften, as if the city itself acknowledged Marcus's silent but powerful victory. The officers, humiliated but aware of the gravity of their mistake, remained speechless. And Marcus knew this was only the beginning of a larger upheaval, one that would shake not only this police station, but the entire city. The next morning, the streets of Chicago seemed different. The noise of traffic was punctuated by lively conversations and worried glances at phone screens and newspapers displaying the news. Unjust arrest of a CEO, Marcus Reynolds handcuffed by the police. The videos were already circulating on social media. They showed Marcus, handcuffed, calm and dignified, facing two visibly embarrassed police officers. Comments poured in, indignation, anger, and widespread support. The hashtags #JusticeForMarcus and #PoliceInjustice went viral within hours. In his office, Marcus watched the impact of the affair with measured calm. He knew this exposure could be used to change the situation. His communications team was already preparing a public statement. "Marcus," said his assistant Lena Carter, "are you sure you want to publish everything now? The media is going to be intense." "Yes, Lena. It's time to turn this humiliation into an opportunity for change," he replied. Meanwhile, at the police station, Thompson and Keller were overwhelmed by the pressure. Their boss, Captain Hayes, had summoned them for a stern reprimand. "You have seriously tarnished the image of our department. Your actions have sparked a public outcry. Prepare your apologies, and be ready to answer for your actions before an ethics committee." The agents exchanged anxious glances. They realized that the humiliation they had inflicted on Marcus was no longer just personal, it was public and historic. At the press conference, Marcus appeared in an impeccable suit, his face calm and determined. He spoke before the cameras. "Last night, I was arrested without cause and handcuffed in public. What should have been a simple evening at work became an example of injustice. But today, I choose to turn this experience into a lesson for us all. Dignity, respect, and justice are non-negotiable, regardless of your color or status." The journalists, stunned by his calm and composure, began filming and broadcasting live. Social media exploded, sharing every word, every gesture. "Your actions have sparked a massive awakening," Marcus added. "And I will work with the police department to create training programs so that this type of incident never happens again." Outside, protesters and ordinary citizens applauded and chanted his name. The police officers who had thought they could intimidate Marcus were now cornered by public opinion. Thompson whispered to Keller, ashamed. "I never would have thought it would turn out like this. We underestimated a man, and we're going to pay for it," Keller replied, his voice low and trembling. Marcus, observing the scene from the stands, knew that the most difficult but most important part of his battle had just begun, to transform this humiliation and injustice into lasting change and real impact. The weeks following Marcus Reynolds' wrongful arrest were intense. Internal investigations into Thompson and Keller intensified. Both officers were suspended, unable to contest the obvious evidence of their error, and each day brought new public criticism of the police's handling of Marcus. In his office, Marcus reviewed the reports and videos of the incident. His face remained calm, but his eyes reflected a fierce determination. He knew this wasn't just about personal redress, it was an opportunity to create lasting change. "Marcus," said Lena, "do you want us to arrange a meeting with the police department to discuss your programs?" "Yes, Lena. It's time to transform anger and pain into concrete action." A few days later, Marcus went to police headquarters. Captain Hayes received him respectfully. "Marcus, thank you for agreeing to this meeting," Hayes said. "I want to make sure we learn from this mistake and that our department evolves." "Thank you, Captain," Marcus replied. "But this isn't just about us. It's about the entire community. We need to create training programs on respect, equality, and justice." A few weeks after this meeting, Marcus officially launched the Reynolds Program for Justice and Equality, funded by his company. The program included training for police officers, community outreach seminars, and initiatives to strengthen dialogue between the police and citizens. Meanwhile, Thompson and Keller were forced to issue a public apology. On a small platform in front of the media, trembling, they declared, "We apologize to Marcus Reynolds and to everyone who may have been hurt by our actions. We now understand the seriousness of our mistakes and will work to improve." Citizens and journalists alike were watching intently, but most of their gazes were fixed on Marcus. He had transformed his own humiliation into a moment of education and inspiration. At the program's inauguration, Marcus addressed dozens of police officers and citizens. "What happened could have broken me, but I chose to build. True strength lies not in fear or intimidation, but in truth, justice, and dignity. Today, we have the opportunity to change our society, one step at a time." Applause erupted. Police officers, citizens, and journalists realized they had witnessed a lesson in leadership and resilience. Marcus, despite the humiliation and injustice, had not only restored his honor but had also transformed the incident into a catalyst for change for the entire city. The rain had long since stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds, bathing the city in a soft, promising light. For Marcus Reynolds, this wasn't just the end of a humiliating incident, it was the beginning of a new chapter, where justice and dignity finally prevailed over fear and prejudice.